We're going to be auditing a code base called Lottery Friends. We've heard a lot about security. We've heard a lot about all this stuff. Now let's get down to brass tacks. How do we actually do security? What does it take? What does it look like? What does it feel like and what are all the tools at our disposal to make sure we are successful? For those of you who do not know, some of my information is here. Some of my socials are here. My name is Patrick Collins. I'm a smart contract engineer, security researcher, educator. There's my Twitter, my YouTube. I am the co-founder of Cyfrin. We are a smart contract security platform, and we also run the CodeHawks competitive audits platform. And as I mentioned before, we have created some of the largest and most watched smart contract developer educational videos on the planet. The YouTube videos, we have #1 and #2 for the most watched Solidity courses ever created. So we've been doing this a very long time. Here is the agenda for what we're going to be talking about here. #1, welcome and resources. So I'm going to talk about some resources here. We're going to go over the audit process from a high level. Then we're going to jump into the audit. So I need to finish #1 and #2 in the next 5 minutes, so we have plenty of time to actually go over the audit. This is going to be the code base that we're going to be auditing or doing a security review of. Here's the code base. I'll have a QR code and I'll show this link again in a minute. It looks like I'm cutting off the bottom just a little bit. Let's fix that. Okay, lovely. Much better. I already have it queued up in my VS Code. Great. Okay. Anyways. So some resources. So #1, for those of you who are looking to begin your security journeys, definitely be sure to sign up for CodeHawks. We are running an awesome program right now called First Flights, which are much easier fake code bases that we have created to give you a chance to find some bugs and get familiar, get used to auditing and doing security reviews, right? Give you some confidence, because a lot of these professional code bases can be very daunting. It can be very hard to chalk up a win. You can be working nothing. And these first flights are meant to be, hey, there's a lot of easy bugs to pick up in here to give you that confidence and show you, how to get better. So be sure to sign up for CodeHawks. And then finally, be sure to sign up, subscribe to my YouTube, go to web3education.dev as well, subscribe for alerts as well, because we are working on the ultimate Solidity security, smart contract, EVM, DeFi, assembly course ever created. And I have given out some alpha that it will be done in the next 30 days. If you see me on Twitter, tell me to get off Twitter and get back to making the course. Okay. Again, here is the code base that we're actually going to be working with. And before we actually get into doing this security review or this audit, and then also we want to talk about kind of what we're looking to do. There's a slight different mindset if we're doing this for a competitive platform like CodeHawks versus doing kind of a more traditional security review. In the competitive landscape, we want to optimize for time to find as many high impact bugs as possible. Normally in a private audit, we have a lot more time and we can actually focus more on, okay, what do we need to do to make this code base safer? And we give a lot better consultation advice. For the live audit here, we're going to assume that you're doing either or. We're going to focus more on this kind of being a traditional private audit where we are going to actually create a report at the end of this process with all the bugs that we have found. Next, so the audit process itself, it's really at a high level, these 3 steps: get context, use tools, do a manual review, and then write the report. That's really it at the end of the day. It's these 3 steps. The first step is actually the most important step. Most bugs are actually a result of some business logic being messed up, right? So it's a lot of times people think, oh, you need to be like this cryptography wizard person, but it's really just understanding the business requirements of the protocol is oftentimes more important than being a super, EVM savant, right? So getting context, what is the protocol supposed to do? And are there any scenarios where it won't do what it's supposed to do? So getting context is absolutely crucial for the first step of any code base, right? Read the documentation, right? Read the docs. #2, tools and manual review. We'll go over some tools and then write the report. And again, I have a video on my YouTube, how to audit ENS, where actually legendary security researcher Tincho goes over his exact process for auditing a protocol. And it's actually really interesting is we recorded that video of him like, hey, like I'm going through ENS, like here's the approach that I'm taking. And 2 weeks later, he gets paid out $100,000 for a critical that he found, right? So literally we recorded that video. He's like, here, I'm working on ENS. Let me show you what I'm doing. And then he got paid out for some massive bug he found. Absolutely insane. One more thing. There's like 3 more things. One more thing. You might have heard me say like audit and security review kind of flip-flopped a couple of times here. As security researchers, we want to take the more correct terminology here, and we want to say security review instead of audit. Security review is a much better representation of what we're actually doing, right? An audit isn't a very good term. I can explain that later if there's questions about it. But as security researchers, we want to see to the mindset of saying this is a security review. Most protocols won't know what the hell we're talking about, and they'll say, oh, like that's an audit, right? But it's important for us to say it's a security review and let the protocols call it an audit, whatever they want to do. Okay. The audit process more in depth. It's really kind of broken into 3 phases. This is a private audit and even competitive audits where you do an initial review. You give the report of, hey, here's all the stuff we found. The protocol fixes the issues. And then you do a mitigation review where you check to see, hey, if all the stuff that they fixed actually fixed the stuff or introduced more issues. And the more we do security reviews, the more we do audits, the more we look into security, the better we're going to get. Repetition here is the mother of skill. In the beginning, it's very difficult, and it gets easier. The more you do it, the better you get. Here are the tools we're going to be working with today. We're going to be working with Foundry. We're going to be doing a little bit of static analysis with Slither. I'll explain that as we actually use it. And then we will be working with Solidit as well, and I'll explain what that tool is when we get there. We won't be fuzzing formal verification, symbolic execution, etc. If you're interested in those, I have a couple of videos of those on my YouTube channel. So now I will let people take some time, grab this link, and go to this code base, and we'll give people 5 minutes to do 2 things. Number 1, ask questions. And then number 2, see how many bugs they can spot. You have 5 minutes. This is obviously the most expedited security review you will ever do because I'm only giving you 5 minutes, but let's do it. Here's the code base. Again, you should be able to see the link, Patrick Alpha C, ETHGlobal Live Audit. You have 5 minutes. 5 minutes to find as many bugs as possible, and then we're going to start the show. And while we are doing this, let me answer any questions that have popped up in the chat here. I'm looking at the ETHGlobal.tv chat. Let me pull this up actually. If you want to jump in the chat to ask questions, you can find that here. ETHGlobal.tv, that link right here. You can jump into the chat, ask questions. So 5 minutes. You all have 5 minutes. 4 minutes now. You have less time. No questions so far. Okay, nice. And while you're all looking, I'm going to take a swig of water. Can somebody paste this link into the chat? That's the first. Oh, thank you so much, nucleargeek.eth. Much appreciated. All right, I'm going to answer this. You can mute me if you want to spend some time looking for bugs, by the way. All right, first question. Are most of the bugs you find at assembly level or normal code level? Most of the time, normal code level, actually, not assembly level. Sometimes you find bugs at assembly level. Normally, if a protocol is using assembly, to me, I usually kind of just almost like as a blanket statement, hey, like maybe try to avoid doing that. There's a reason we have compilers. But most bugs, the vast majority of bugs come directly from somebody doing some incorrect business logic as opposed to some weird assembly thing. What are the advantages of using Foundry over Hardhat? It's faster. Everything's written in Solidity. Those are the 2 advantages. I would say the advantages of Hardhat are just the opposite. Everything's written in JavaScript. So JavaScript is one of, if not the most popular language on the planet. Very approachable tool. Gives into the kind of the JavaScript everywhere mentality where, you know, your backend's JavaScript, your frontend's JavaScript. So they both have their advantages. Big fan of Hardhat, big fan of Foundry. I like Foundry for a lot of my stuff because it is faster, and it's kind of becoming the go-to tool for security researchers. Okay, 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. Any other questions? If you find a bug, at the end of the 2 minutes, drop in the chat how many bugs you found. Don't actually say the bugs, just the number of bugs that you found. This code base has been kind of specifically tailored to have a lot of bugs in it. It's a little bit of a sneak peek of one of the modules in the upcoming security course. The code base in the security course is going to be a little bit different. I customized this specifically for this workshop. So this is a never before seen code base, and I will probably never use it again unless I want to repurpose it for some other content. Actually, I probably will do that. That's probably smart, right? One minute left. Any other questions before we dive in? I'm looking at the chat. Looking at the chat. All right, no other questions. If there's any other questions as we go along, feel free to drop in the chat. Like I said, we will be viewing that from time to time. All right, cool. Well, welcome. So I have already cloned this. I should have got rid of that. That's fine though. I've already cloned this. It's already in my repo. It's already here. So we're going to be approaching this as if it is a real security review, as if we're actually doing a review live. So what did we say the first step was going to be? The first step for any code base is what? What did we say? Here's kind of the more advanced one. Here's the basic one. Get context, or scoping, and then reconnaissance, right? Really, we just want to understand what's this code base supposed to do. So before I even look into this code, and this actually has a pretty familiar, like I'm already very familiar with Foundry, so I know that all the main code is going to be in this SRC, all the tests are going to be in tests, script I can kind of ignore. I want to read the docs. So for this, all the docs are in this readme.md. All right, cool. I'm seeing some people post in the chat the number of bugs they found. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So we want to read, what is this code base supposed to do, right? You can 100% look in the code base as you're kind of getting context here, but I like to just try to understand what this code base even does, right? And while I'm doing this, what a lot of people will do, what a lot of security researchers will do is they'll create a little folder or a little file or something called like notes.md or something, just some place to dump your thoughts, right? Some place to write down all your thoughts. And as you're going along, reading the docs, you can kind of put these thoughts down on paper. Some people print out the code base to write thoughts down. Some people write it down manually, whatever you want to do, okay? So let's read what this is supposed to do. And we're going to go kind of quick through this because we've got a lot to show. So this protocol is designed to be a fair lottery. Users can enter the raffle, and the owner of the contract takes a cut of the total pot as a fee. So right away, we understand a lot about what we should be looking for in this code base. The protocol is designed to be a fair lottery. Just by that, we say, okay, cool. I know how lotteries work. They often have a randomization, right? A random winner has to be picked to win some prize. Immediately, attack vectors start coming to head. Okay, is there a way to manipulate the randomness so that a not fair winner is picked? Is there a way to break some of the payouts? Is there a way to break the entrances? Users can enter the raffle, and the owner of the contract takes a cut of the pot as total fees. Maybe is there some place where the cut is incorrectly calculated? Is there a place where we can block the owner from taking their cut? all of these attack vectors can start to percolate just by reading these 2 lines. Getting context, incredibly important. Now we have some more docs here. Call the enter raffle function with the following parameters, an address array of participants, a list of addresses that enter. You can use this to enter yourself multiple times or yourself in a group of friends. Duplicate addresses are not allowed. So that's something we want to look for. Users are allowed to get a refund of their ticket and value if they call the refund function. So again, more attack vectors. Can I break the refund function? Every X seconds, the raffle will be able to draw a winner. The raffle will be able to draw a winner, will be given ETH. So the docs are kind of messed up, and will be given ETH. The owner of the protocol will set a fee address, take a cut of the value, and the rest of the funds will be set to the winner. I actually meant to take this out. Before this, there will be no fee address, but that might be something right there. That's a vulnerability, or we just say, hey, you have this in the docs and it's not there, right? So now we know a lot more about what the code base is supposed to do. We've got some context. Now we can actually start, diving into the code base and really taking whatever steps we want to do, right? And like I said, as we were reading, maybe we took some notes like, oh, look for X attack, it needs to be fair, whatever we want to do. Any notes in here? I probably wouldn't have put any notes yet, but oftentimes when I'm reading the docs, like a big DeFi protocol can be really complicated. So I will usually take a lot of notes when working with the DeFi protocol. And especially when you're doing a private audit or competitive audit, if you have questions during this context, this gain context piece of your security review, you want to ask a lot of questions. It's really important to have a highway of communication between yourself and the protocol so you can understand as much information as possible. So I probably would have asked a bunch of questions. Hey, what's up with this fee address? Or maybe not actually, because I think the docs are pretty clear, but that's because I wrote them. Haha. Cool. So we've gotten some context. We know what the code base is supposed to do. So maybe the next step that we do is we just try to run the test suite, right? So with Forge, we can build it with Forge build. Looks like I'm missing dependencies, so we're going to install some dependencies here. It looks like we need to install some dependencies. Let's go back to the README. Let's see if there's anything we missed. Okay, we need to run the make file. So if I run make, maybe that'll install the dependencies. If I go to the make file, not familiar with make file, don't worry too much about it. Basically, we just ran make and it ran remove, install, build. And it looks like it has this install step, which installs these very specific Open Zeppelin contracts. Cool. So the make actually just did that for us. It installed all the dependencies. It ran remove, install, build, it removed dependencies before just to start clean, installed the dependencies, and then actually build it. Now we can run Forge build, which is like kind of the equivalent of like hardhead compile or Browning compile. And it looks like compilation went fine. Cool. So next, maybe I run the tests, right? And usually for Foundry, I do usually just check foundry.toml to make sure there's nothing in this config that's malicious. It looks pretty benign to me. So maybe then I'll run Forge test, just run the test suite, see what we're working with here. Okay, we've got some tests. Great. I don't see any fuzz tests or invariant tests or something. That might be something I take a look at. But for the most part, it seemed like a pretty standard repo with a not super advanced test suite. As a security researcher, if I'm doing competitive audit, that's actually music to my ears because I go, aha, these developers might not be as advanced when it comes to writing tests, and they might have missed something because of that. So as a private auditor, that makes me very nervous because then I go, oh my God, they don't have a mature code base. I'm probably going to tell them, hey, you need to do invariant tests. Like I definitely would tell them, hey, you need to do invariant tests, stateful fuzzing. If you have questions about what those are, we can talk about that in a little bit. Maybe I'll run Forge coverage, get a coverage report. Right there is something that's very telling. I see 0.7.6 of solidity. That should be a red flag. Why are they using this super weird version? And then we can see here, it looks like they have pretty weak test coverage as well. So around 76% of their lines are tested, 76% of statements, 70% of branches. That's pretty, 62% of functions, that's pretty low. So just by me running this test suite, I can pretty much guarantee I'm going to find some bugs. Why? Because to me, this says this is not a very mature code base because they haven't done a whole lot of testing here. So in a competitive audit, music to my ears. In a private audit, panic. Well, not panic, just like, oh, okay. Now in a private audit, you're going to have to teach the client, hey, here's how you write a better test suite. Here's how you get your test coverage up, etc. So, and as you can see, we're still kind of getting context. What does the code base feel like? What does it look like? Security is kind of this journey, and we are on it. So now that we've done some of that, we can start to look through some of the actual code base, right? It looks like this is the main code base. It's lotteryfriends.sol. Because I'm very familiar with Foundry, I know I can look at their deploy script, which is in the script folder, and this will give me a good idea of how they plan on deploying it. Okay, it looks like they're going to be doing some stuff with Uniswap, some stuff with the WETH contract, some stuff with the USDC. And maybe one of the first things I do is I double check this, even though this might be out of scope. Sorry, I didn't talk about scope. Normally, whenever you do a review, there's a scope. I forgot to fill that in here. The exact contracts that you want to be auditing. For us, what's in scope is just lotteryfriends.sol, right? So in scope, lotteryfriends.sol. So the deploy script, if we find bugs in here, it doesn't matter, but this can still give us some good context on what to look for. So we see some compatibilities using an older version of Solidity, and we're going to be deploying this on the Ethereum chain. We've got some stuff about roles, which is great. But in any case, all just getting context, right? And this piece here, I probably am going to report this as an issue. Why are you using this old version of Solidity 0.76? Why aren't you using a new one, right? That's probably one of the first questions we're going to ask the protocol. Why are you using this old version of Solidity? But okay, cool. So now let's actually jump into the code base. And before, actually, I was thinking we would do manual review first. Actually, I am going to show you Slither first. So Slither is something called a static analysis tool. There's a static analysis tool. It's a tool that very kind of dumbly just checks the code base for bugs, but without actually running anything. It's called static analysis because it analyzes the code without running anything. The opposite of that would be dynamic analysis, where it's actually running some computation, right? So static analysis tool just looks at the raw Solidity and says, okay, is there anything I can kind of pattern match that's an issue? And most of the time, most code bases should run this before audit, but if they don't, you can run this. Now, I will say, if you're a competitive auditor and a code base runs and Slither finds a bunch of vulnerabilities, everyone's going to report that. Everyone's going to report the Slither vulnerabilities because everyone knows about Slither. It's a phenomenal tool. It should be one of the first tools that is actually run. So I kind of cheated a little bit. I put this little Slither config in here, which basically helps me run Slither. I've already installed it, so I'm going to run it. If you're not familiar with installing it, don't worry about it. If it's the first time that you've seen this tool run, see how freaking cool it is. So what this does, like I said, it'll basically read this entire code base. Oops. It'll read this entire code base, and it'll look for issues. It might take a hot minute to run, so we'll come back to it. I'm gonna hide the terminal for now while it runs, and we'll do some manual review. We will come back to Slither. But okay, we're finally in the code base. We're finally looking at code. And this is where we start taking notes. So right at the top of this code base, we see this little caret here. Pragma Solidity 0.7.6. My initial thought is this is a bug right here. And I'll put like a note in the code base. I'll say like at audit or at review or just whatever comment to say, hey, like this is an issue. I might say floating pragma isn't cool. You know, I'm probably going to write something more verbose than that, but I might report this as like an informational finding. You really want to nail your solidity types as opposed to using like a floating pragma, just so that you're always using the exact compiler version that you want, right? Maybe a test only works on a certain compiler version, so you really want to nail it to a specific version as opposed to using a floating one. So that's going to be my first finding. Just say, hey, nail this. Okay, cool. Next, looks like we have some imports. They're doing named imports. Love to see that. We have some package dependencies from OpenZeppelin. We're going to skip looking at OpenZeppelin. For us, we're going to say, using OpenZeppelin's a gimme. We have some interfaces that they're using as well. It looks like they're using this iUniswap v2 router. Maybe I cheated. I put the link in here. Maybe I compare their interface to the actual interface to make sure they're actually the same. They're actually correct. For now, I'm just going to ignore that and I'm going to assume it's correct, but I probably would double check to make sure it's good. And we're doing some other stuff from OpenZeppelin. Cool. One thing to note, we did install, where is it? Package.json. We did install a very specific version of OpenZeppelin contracts. That's great to see. In the make file, we got to see that. A very specific version of OpenZeppelin contracts. That's great to see, but it's also weird to see because OpenZeppelin v5 just came out. Why are you using this antiquated version of OpenZeppelin? What's going on here? Are you trying to rug pull somebody? What's going on? Anyways, finally into the contract. We have some comments. This will give us more context. I would read this. I would leave notes, but cool. Lottery Friends is ownable. Great. So we know that the owner of the contract who's going to be taking the fees is probably coming from this ownable stuff. We have all these state variables. We have this library that we're using. Cool. We have some more state variables. We have some events. Cool. Okay, cool. Here's the first actual function that we probably look at, right? The constructor. We probably might double check, make sure all these are right. I'm just going to assume they're right for now. I might start asking a question like, what is this swap path? Like, what the heck is this? I might put like a queue. What is a swap path? Why is this needed? Why are we doing some weird stuff with Uniswap? If we're unfamiliar with Uniswap, maybe we have to get some context on Uniswap. The rest of this stuff looks pretty straightforward. Obviously, I would probably take more time looking at this, but right now I'm kind of just skimming the code base, looking for any ideas. Okay, cool. We have this enter raffle function, and this is where we probably are going to start going line by line. And I actually usually like to look for I call it like one of the main functions. What is the protocol actually? What are users actually going to be doing? This enter raffle is going to be one of the functions users are actually going to be using. There's the refund function that they were talking about, where if a user enters the raffle and they want to refund before the raffle is up, they can refund. We have get, this is kind of just a view function, whatever. The select winner function, we're going to be looking all over this one. Withdraw fees, that's for the owner. Withdraw tokens, it looks like that's for the owner too. This is an internal function. And it looks like we have this weird Uniswap sell profits for USDC function. It looks like we're swapping the ETH we get paid for USDC to prevent currency risk. So for some reason, the protocol wants to swap the ETH for USDC, whatever they want to do. Cool, I guess. But so now we have some context of what the functions actually do. Actually, Foundry has a method that prints them out. We can actually start looking through some of these functions to make sure they actually do what they do, right? So now we actually get into the manual review. So this first function, enter raffle. These are what users are going to be doing. They give an address array of new players. Cool. It looks like they need to pay a require message.value equals some entrance fee times new players.length. Okay, cool. So for each player, they need to pay some message.value. Let's check entrance fee. Looks like it's an immutable variable. Great. It's set once in the constructor. Okay, that makes sense. All right, cool. And it looks like they loop through this array and they push each one of these players to the players array. Okay, cool. And then we have this weird check for duplicates where we again loop through and we check for duplicates. And right away, this is something weird to me. First off, when you see a loop, you really want to think gas. Loops are not great for gas. But why are we doing all this gas stuff here? And reading this, I see we actually loop through. So we have this players array, which is a state variable. We loop through this players array, and then we loop through it again to make sure that there's no duplicates here, right? And this already is an issue. This is actually a security vulnerability that we're looping through this players array twice. Now, why is this a vulnerability? Well, so, and then I might here just do like @audit. And then why is this sticking out to me? Well, the reason this is, ChatGPT is actually giving me some hints here. It is very expensive, but this is actually what's called a potential denial of service attack vector. Now, why is this a potential denial of a service attack vector? Well, as this array gets bigger and bigger, doing this check for duplicates is going to get more and more gas expensive. So if maybe when there's one person in here, maybe this function costs 10 gas because you only need to check for one person. But if there's 1,000 people in this, maybe this costs 5,000 gas. And it becomes incrementally more expensive for a new player to enter the raffle because of this super gas expensive check here. And now what I would do to so right away, because I've done this a long time, I know right away that this is an issue. But what I'll probably do to convince the protocol that this really is an issue is I'll try to write a proof of concept, an actual proof of code that this is an issue. And I have written a test for this already. And I'm just going to pop it on screen real quick to double check this. Test, lottery friends test. So I'm just going to copy paste this in here. Call it, puppy raffle, whoops. Some hidden alpha, puppy raffle. Lottery friends. So what I can do now is I'm going to run this to, and cool, it looks like Slither actually finished. We'll come back to that in a second. What I'm going to do is forge test -mt. I'm going to run my proof of code. I wrote a test suite that proves that it actually is gas inefficient, and then I need to do -vvv to get my console logs to print out. So here are my logs. Gas cost of the first 100 players costs this much gas. Gas cost of the second 100 players costs this much gas. So I've actually written proof, and this is really good for competitive audits as well, to actually have a test that gives you something like this, that entering and sorry, I didn't show you the test. We're running a little short on time. That entering this raffle is actually going to get more and more expensive for new people. So what I might want to do if I'm a lottery attendee who wants to win is the instant the lottery opens, I bang up the queue with a ton of fake alternate addresses that are all mine so that it's incredibly expensive for a new person to come in and join the lottery. I basically say, hey, if you want to join this lottery, you're going to need to pay 100 times more gas than I did to enter this lottery, disincentivizing other people from entering the lottery, giving you a very unfair chance of winning the lottery, right? So we have found a vulnerability. We have proved it's a vulnerability, and we're going to write it up as a report. So oftentimes auditors can write the report whenever they want. Let's assume we're going to be writing the reports as we do it. So we're going to say report.md. We're going to write our first report very quickly because time is of the essence. Okay, cool. And so we're just going to kind of keep it some minimal markdown for now. First thing we need to do is we need to decide the severity of this issue. So, right, we know there's some denial of service attack here. We need to decide the impact and then the likelihood. So how impactful is this? I would say this is high. This is high. Maybe it's medium because it directly will affect other people entering this lottery, right? It makes it way crappier for somebody to enter the lottery, making this really not fair at all, right? It's going to cost the next person way more gas. The likelihood of this is high or medium, right? So this might be a high or a medium. It really depends. For this one, I'm going to say it's a medium because it will be incredibly gas costly for the attacker as well. So I'm going to mark this as medium. I think marking this as a high would be very reasonable as well. So I might say, all right, cool. This is our first M1. Let's call it a medium. And the way we want to, and the way we do reports here is we do it with this format. Write up format.md. I'm just going to copy paste here. So this is the format of a write-up. So you're going to do the severity, hyphen the number, description, impact, proof of concept, and then recommended mitigation. So the description of the attack, what is the impact, what is the proof that it's a real issue, and then what the protocol should do to fix it. And then for the title, we want to use the format root cause plus impact. That's how we want to title this. So if we copy this, bring it over to our report, paste it in like so. This is M1. What is the root cause of this is the duplicate check. We can say gas expensive duplicate check in, we go back up. What's the name of this function? In the enter raffle function. So maybe I'll say lottery friends enter raffle. This is one popular way to reference a function. You say the contract name, 2 semicolons, and then the function name. Gas expensive duplicate check in lottery friends enter raffle. Causes, remember, because we're doing root cause impact, causes denial of service attack, making subsequent, I spelled that wrong, subsequent participants, causing subsequent participants to spend more gas to enter the raffle. Because we're a little bit low on time, I'm going to kind of speed through this. Got some of this already written up, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. Maybe like function loops to the players array, and this is actually lottery friends. Players array to check for duplicates. However, the longer the array is, the more checks the player will do, the more gas, blah, blah. Impact. This is where we would explain the impact. Makes it less fair. Blah, blah, blah. Proof of concept. This is where I would put my test suite. For proof of concept, you don't always have to do write a test that actually proves it. Sometimes just explaining the exact steps is perfect enough. But here's what's really important. The onus is on you. And actually, let me focus on myself for a hot minute here. I know I'm running short on time. The onus is actually on you to prove to the protocol why this is an issue. Because here's what's going to happen for a private audit or a competitive audit. Number one, if you're doing a private audit, you report this thing to a protocol, you go, hey, this is an issue, but you do kind of a weak proof of concept. Here's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to say, yeah, I don't think so. And they're not going to fix it, and they're going to go get wrecked, and it's going to be your fault because it is your job to prove to them why they need to fix this. So the more proof you can put in this proof of concept, the better. In a competitive audit, what will happen is if you put up a lofty proof of concept, you don't write a proof of code, which like includes a test suite, the judge is going to look at your code base and go, I don't think so. Because it depends on the judge. If your judge isn't a very good judge, or they haven't been doing it very long, they're going to go, this is probably fine. This is probably not an issue. And you are not going to get that write-up, and it is going to be your fault, not the judge's fault. So getting this right is incredibly important. When in doubt, if you're not sure you're getting across the importance of this, write a test suite, write a proof of code, prove that it is an issue. Drill this into you. It is your job to prove issues to judges or the protocol. You are an educator as a security researcher. Believe it or not, you are an educator. You need to educate why it is an issue. Great. Hopefully that is clear. Moving on. So this is where I would put, my code base. I would explain it some more, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then finally, recommended mitigation. This is where you would explain what to do. I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to copy paste some stuff. I also have some diffs that I would give, like, hey, here's the exact code base I would change. But this is, at a high level, this is where you explain what to do. Excuse me. For this one, maybe we consider allowing duplicates. They can create new wallet addresses anyways. So like you preventing duplicates kind of doesn't do anything. Consider adding a mapping to check for duplicates, do something else. And then for the Puffy REPL, for the code base that this code base was designed off of, I even did some diffs. Get really good at doing diffs in Markdown. If we show what this looks like in Markdown, it actually shows, in green additions, in red subtractions, like that. And so like do this 3 backticks and then say diff, and then put pluses where you added stuff and minuses where you subtracted stuff. That's great. It makes it very obvious what your recommended change is. Great. I'm going to pause real quick for questions, and then I want to show at least one more vulnerability from Slither. I wanted to show 3. I was super optimistic. I wanted to show 3 manual review attacks and 3. We'll see how. I'm going to pause for questions real quick, and then try to rip through these last couple ones. On line 67, the duplicate check is not efficient. Nested loop has a complexity. Yes, exactly. It is a denial of service attack. Spot on. You found it. Well done. Excellent. Okay, cool. Looks like there's no other questions or I need to pause more often. If there's questions, we'll come back in a minute. Cool. Let me know in the chat if you're learning something or if I'm going too fast and this is not a very good use of time. Cool. Moving on. So we found an issue in here. Maybe there's more issues. I'm gonna get to the Slither in just a second. Maybe there's more issues, but we're gonna kind of speed up. Okay, cool. So then I would keep doing that exact process. Go line by line. I'm leaving. Oh, this is a loop for players. I'm leaving notes. I like to do this /E to explain something to myself. I'll do /Q to like ask myself a question, just some type of commenting syntax for you, right? And like I said, oftentimes I'll be going back and forth between the notes and the file to just dump as much of my thoughts as possible, right? So I would keep going. I would read through all this stuff. I'm going to do one more manual review find. We're going to do one Slither find, and then we're going to do the report. Add an hour, I approve it. Nuclear geek, if only. We're going to do one more manual find. We're going to do one Slither find, and then we're actually going to do the report generation. And I have to do that in less than 10 minutes. Okay, cool. So we come to the bottom. Have a word wrap. And we see this function here, sell profits for USDC. This says it swaps the ETH for USDC to prevent currency risk on Uniswap v2. So, okay, cool. So we saw above players pay ETH. It looks like we get some profits. And then this protocol is actually going to allow people to sell it. And then it looks like it's going to send that sold ETH for USDC. It's going to send it to the owner. Cool. This is where, if you're not familiar with Uniswap, you would need to get familiar with Uniswap. So this is where, again, context is important. If you know nothing about, sometimes you will have to go down rabbit holes. On that audit with Tincho, we would have to, we would say, hey, Tincho went down a huge rabbit hole on DNS. What is DNS? The domain name service. How does that actually work? And compared it to ENS. Okay. So sometimes you're going to have to go down rabbit holes to understand context. To really understand what this code base does, you got to know how Uniswap works. So even though Uniswap is out of scope for this audit review, to actually effectively audit this, you need to understand Uniswap. So we would read this and let's figure out if there's any issues here. As I go read this, if you see the issue, go ahead, drop it in chat. There's at least one glaring issue. So, okay, sell profits for USDC. Okay, the first thing I noticed, okay, why is this public? You know, maybe I'll put like, shouldn't this be external? If the contract doesn't call it elsewhere, this should be external instead. Maybe I'll put that as a question. Public, okay, why is this public? Should this be only owner? Maybe I'll ask this question. Should this be only owner? I'm just asking questions, right? Should this be only owner? Okay, I see amount, address this dot balance. Okay, that looks fine. Okay, here's the actual swap here. So it takes the interface, wraps it around the Uniswap router. We call this function swap ETH for tokens. We send some value, and then we have some parameters in here. Maybe I'm not familiar with these parameters. I'm going to control click or just go back to this interface. And we know, what are we looking for? Swap exact ETH for tokens. Okay, let's do a toggle word wrap. What are the inputs? Amount, out minimum, path, to, and deadline. So just a real quick precursor on what these actually do. Amount, out minimum says the minimum amount that we want to get back. So when you're using Uniswap, it's an AMM, an automated market maker, and it uses pools to, without going too deep into how Uniswap works, it uses pools to figure out the price of something. But that price can kind of subtly change over time, and you just want to give Uniswap, hey, like here's at least how much USDC I want back. The path, I'm not going to explain this for now. Address 2 is going to be the receiver of the USDC, and then deadline is what block we should consider this swap bad, right? Because let's say we send this transaction, we send it to our node takes a long time to actually send it, or maybe there's like a gas spike, the price might actually turn bad. So we want to say, hey, in a couple blocks, cancel the transaction, right? That's what this deadline is for. So knowing that, I could say, okay, so this zero is going to be the amount out min. Swap path, we're going to ignore. Okay, owner, this is the 2. So that's good. We're sending the USDC to the owner of this contract. And then we have block.timestamp, which is going to be the deadline. So right away, this should be kind of alarming to you. But maybe we think there's an issue here, but we're not exactly sure what it is. So one thing a lot of people do is kind of sanity check. Hey, this swap exact ETH for tokens, is there some other person who was reported an issue with this? Maybe let's go to, whoops. It's not important. Maybe there's some other person who reported this. We can come to the tool, Solidit, you do have to sign up, where we can search for somebody else who reported a finding using this function. So we'll put this in, it looks like somebody has reported this on another competitive audit platform, and we can actually read the details of this to see if this is similar to the issue that we're actually running into. For me, I know because I have read Solid It a whole bunch that this is actually a slippage issue. We can also look that up. We can do slippage. And actually, I'm sure if we read one of these, it would tell us what we want. Having the deadline be blocked.timestamp, this is saying that basically anytime you send this this function, this will always be valid because it's saying the deadline is the current block and it'll always check the current block and just always be valid. So we're saying there's basically no deadline to send this. And then number two, the amount out min is 0. Somebody could swap in, somebody could jump in, tank the price of ETH on Uniswap with a flash loan to basically make this swap worthless, give you 0 ETH, or excuse me, give you almost 0 USDC because your minimum is 0, and basically ruin all profits for the owner of this contract. So if you're unfamiliar with MEV, if you're like, what the hell is Patrick talking about? Sorry, we're kind of short on time. Sorry, I can't explain it. But this would be an issue. This would be a massive high, and we would report this. There's a slippage issue here. If you go to CodeHawks, if you're familiar, if you go to contests, this was a big issue in the Beetle contest, and this would show up on Solid It as well. And if you're interested in learning more about how slippage works, it's H4 sandwich attack to steal ERC20 tokens in the fees contract. It's basically this exact attack. If you want to learn more about what this attack looks like, I've also got some MEV videos on my YouTube as well. So I'll report that. I know I'm pretty much at time. And also, yeah, somebody posted in the chat, can't block the timestamp be manipulated by miners. Kind of, it's a lot harder now that they're validators, but it doesn't really matter because you putting in block.timestamp here basically says that this transaction is valid forever, which is no good because a node could basically just hold on to this transaction until they want the swap to happen and wreck you for your funds, and they can make a whole bunch of funds. So I know I'm a little bit over time. He said I have an hour though, so I'm going to go for the next 3, 4, 5 minutes. We're going to pull up Slither. We're going to see what Slither pointed out to us. This is kind of the output of what Slither looks like. It's categorized by red, yellow, and green. Green means it's low confident, maybe low impact that this is an issue. Yellow is kind of medium, and red is like this is probably an issue. And if we read these, there's actually a couple issues right out the gate. We have some arbitrary sending, and we have some weak randomness. Excuse me. We have some weak randomness, and then, arbitrary sends, some weak randomness. It looks like we have potential reentrancy and the refund function. We've got a whole bunch of issues that we would want to check out. And actually, for this code base, a lot of these issues are actually valid. So we would want to do write-ups for all of these. So that's what Slither looks like. Now, finally, let's actually do a report. So I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit. I'm going to cheat a lot. I'm actually going to give you a sneak peek into a bigger sneak peek into my upcoming course. So a derivative of this code base is actually this code base called Puppy Raffle. And this is my markdown report of that actual code base. So it's got 4 highs, 8 mediums, 8 informationals. At the moment, there probably will be more after I give it another whirl. But you can you want to put all your reports into a markdown file and then actually turn them into a PDF for clients because clients like PDFs. Report. Sorry, 1 second. GitHub, Cyfrin. We have a code base called, it's called like report something, audit report templating, where it gives you actually some templated markdown that you can use to help generate a PDF that looks really nice, right? And so this is kind of built off of that markdown here. So it has this like report example.md. It's a markdown file with a bunch of stuff in here just that you can kind of auto-fill in for creating your own PDF report. Once you've filled all your stuff in, let's just assume we took our, we have our report. We took all of our findings in here. We copy pasted them into this template that we give us. Sorry, I know I'm speeding through this. What we can do then is we can run this report generation script here. Once we've installed Pandex and LaTeX, I'm going super fast. I'm so sorry. I was way too optimistic with how quickly I could do all this stuff. We can run this tool. I'm going to run it for you right here. It is Pandoc. What did I copy paste this report as? 2023 lotteryfriends.md. Got to give it an output name from Markdown, a template, listing. Great. This will run it. This will take a minute, and it'll turn your Markdown into a PDF. And I forgot to add a logo in here. So let's paste my logo in here. Run it again. And then I'm done. All right, cool. And so now we have this output called report.pdf. If I reveal this in Finder, we now get this very nice PDF view of our report. The logo that you added appears at the top. You can obviously change a lot of the stuff in that Markdown file, but it makes this like nice looking report that you can use for clients to be like, hey, here's my report. Here's how nice it is. Look at how nice it is, right? Cool. So I know it went super fast towards the end, but hope you all learned a ton. If we have time for questions, I'll take questions. If we don't, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you learned a lot. If not, you can find us on Twitter as Cyfrin Audits. You can also find me on Twitter at PatrickAlphaC. You can go to, like I said, go to CodeHawks, Cyfrin.com to learn more about some of these competitive audits, and stay tuned for the upcoming security course. So thank you all so much for coming, and hope you learned a lot.